Get their cameras on and we'll get rolling here. And good to see everyone, hopefully soon. All right, welcome to the November 1st through 2nd, 2023 board meeting. My name is Song Oh, president of the board. Before we convene, I would like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing pharmacy law. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. As I facilitate this meeting, I will announce when we are accepting public comment. I have advised the meeting moderator to allow 3 minutes to each individual providing comments. We will begin with public comments for individuals attending in person, followed by public comments by individuals participating via WebEx. This approach is necessary to facilitate this meeting. Before we get started, I would like to ask staff moderating the meeting to provide general instructions. Moderator? Sarah?
All right. I apologize. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
All
I
right.
think we're all trying to multitask, I'm sure.
All right. So when public comment is requested today, I, the moderator, will turn on the WebEx question and answer feature to facilitate public comment. Comments should be limited to the topic that is addressed on the specific agenda item. We will display instructions on the screen each time, and audience members may click on the question mark, typically at the lower right-hand corner of their WebEx screen, type the word comment into the text box, and then click send for their request to be recognized. You may also choose to raise your hand by clicking the hand icon at the bottom row of your computer's WebEx screen. Or if you're an audio-only participant, you may press *3 on your device to raise your hand. Each commenter will be then invited to unmute themselves in turn, and they will be given 3 minutes to speak with a 10-second warning. At the end of that time, their microphone will then be muted, and we will move on to the next commenter. And that should be it for my instructions.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. I have a couple people that are raised hands. I'm not sure what's going on, but we will get to that in just a sec. I'd like to take a roll call to establish a quorum. We'll start with Jesse Crowley.
Licensee member present.
Thank you, Jesse. Trevor is not joining today. Renee Barker.
Hello, licensee member present.
Hi, Renee. Indira Cameron Banks.
Hello, public member present.
Hi, Indira. KK John.
Licensee member present, sir.
Thank you, KK. Just letting you know, KK, I don't think your camera's on, but just wanted to let you know. Jig is not joining, I believe. We'll go to Maria.
Morning or good afternoon, licensee member present.
Thank you, Maria. And Nicole Tebow.
Licensee member present.
Thank you, Nicole. Jason Wise.
Good afternoon, Jason Wise, public member.
Thank you, Jason. A quorum has been established. I truly appreciate and I believe Jose is going to be joining soon. So hopefully Jose will be in attendance soon. Just let me know, Sarah, if he joins, and you can interrupt at any time to let me know. A quorum has been established. I truly appreciate everyone's time and commitment to the board and California consumers. I ask everyone participating today to be respectful of the work before the board today. We encourage participation by members of the public throughout our meetings at appropriate times. The board respectfully requests that when comments are provided, they are done so in a professional manner, consistent with how the board conducts its business. Moving on to the next agenda item 2, public comments for items not on the agenda. We'll now accept public comment for items not on the agenda. You are not required to identify yourself, but may do so. I would like to remind everyone that the board cannot take action on these items except to decide whether to place an item on a future agenda. Members, following a review of the public comments for this agenda item, I will ask members to comment on what, if any, items should be placed on a future agenda. As a reminder, this agenda item is not intended to be a discussion, rather an opportunity for members of the board and members of the public to request consideration of an item for future placement on an agenda, at which time discussion may occur. We'll begin with public comment from individuals participating in the Sacramento location.
No public comment in Sacramento.
Thank you, Anne. Moderator, we are ready for public comment from individuals participating via WebEx.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda or future agenda items, please click either on the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and it looks like we do have a couple requests for public comment, so I'm going to go in the order they were received. First, I have Jackie Stover. Jackie, you will be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
I'm a specialty pharmacist. I just wanted to take this moment to say thank you to the board for taking all our comments into consideration over the previous meetings. The amendment to section 4071.1 is clear, thorough, and inclusive. Hopefully, there will be a consensus and resolution during today and tomorrow's meetings. Once again, thank you. We appreciate all your hard work. Have a great day.
Thank you for the comments.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll move on to our next request for public comment. We have a call-in user, call-in user 3. I'll request to unmute your microphone. I believe it should be *6 when it prompts you to speak. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to address you today. In your very important positions of ensuring public safety, I'm asking you to call an emergency meeting regarding product contamination. I'm sure some of you are aware of the recent developments regarding contaminants in the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 injection. This adulteration was confirmed by numerous labs around the globe, as well as by Health Canada, Canada's FDA equivalent. The contaminants include bacterial DNA plasmids, SV40 promoters, and endotoxins. The alien substances exceed FDA guidelines by orders of magnitude. There are many dangers associated with these contaminants, but the one I'll discuss here today is endotoxins. Endotoxins are in bacteria used in manufacturing. Their detection and removal is vital to the pharmaceutical industry for product quality and safety. If endotoxins get into the bloodstream, fever, shock, and organ failure can occur. In the commercial manufacturing of COVID shots, the modified RNA was grown on E. coli bacteria. This was different from the process used in the trial vials. Labs have confirmed that DNA from E. coli was found in every vial tested. This means that E. coli was not adequately removed during the manufacturing process. Faulty purification is a serious violation of safety and sterile protocols and puts the public at risk. There are numerous reports of anaphylaxis and sepsis after injection, possibly from endotoxins. COVID injectables are extremely susceptible to endotoxin reactions because spike proteins exacerbate the effects of endotoxins. So even standard acceptable levels are very dangerous. In the past, this board has created regulations which eliminated access to a wide number of nutraceutical injectables. The reason was concern over manufacturing, which might result in contamination with endotoxins. This board voted for extreme caution. Now, we have a situation where a product is known to be tainted with endotoxins and has likely already harmed thousands of people. In view of the current contamination, I am requesting that the board conduct an emergency meeting and immediately stop the use of the COVID injections. Thank you for listening, and I hope you take quick action on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments.
All right, this is the moderator. We will move on to our next individual, Victoria Ferrarisi. And Victoria, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
For listening to my comments. This is Vicki Ferrarisi. I've been a registered pharmacist in California for 44 years. I'd like to address the issue of retired pharmacist licensure status. In California, this is an all or nothing proposition for pharmacists. If you think you probably won't work anymore and change your status to retired, that's it. You're out of the game, as it requires sitting for the board exam again to reactivate your license. Or you continue to pay full fees without using the license. Some pharmacists choose instead to become delinquent with their fees to avoid changing to retired status and avoid the fee, since they are not earning any income. I propose the board consider two ideas. Number one, an interim period of having a suspended license, as in Nevada, per Nevada Revised Statute 639.190, where one has a 5-year grace period to reactivate their license before it permanently expires. This allows flexibility for changes in financial status in case one needs to return to work. Or number two, a step-down license category if one wants to do non-direct patient care activities such as teaching, precepting, consulting, volunteering such as at health fairs and the like. In other words, no direct patient care capacity. And of course, the board would restrict this as it sees fit. Might some unscrupulous people use this step-down category of licensure to practice fully? Yes, but so could those with an inactive license, a retired license, a technician license that we have seen in the past, or no license at all. The board can examine what other states and professions do for this category of licensee. Once one's retired, it does not necessarily mean that they no longer have anything to contribute to the profession or to the public well-being, and may be able to contribute for many more years. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Vicky.
All right, this is the moderator, our next individual who has requested public comment, Julie 3. And Julie, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
I'm a former healthcare worker up here in Butte County, California. I'm calling to advocate for the vaccine injured, me being one of them. I was a healthcare worker at Enloe and at the Butte County Public Health Clinics when I received 2 shots of Moderna, and I then got microangiopathy, chronic tinnitus, 3 detached retinas, and 2 cataract surgeries. My mother died on August the 15th of 2022 from 4 shots of Moderna. We both have VAERS reports filed. Since then, when Enloe required the booster and I had to decline, I was fired. So I now have become a victim advocate, and I'm working with React 19, the lobbyist company, as well as COVID Doctors for Medical Ethics International. I wanted to bring your attention to the number of VAERS reports that have actually been filed in California for shots administered by the pharmacy. If you're not aware of these numbers, you need to get a committee together and go request from the Public Health Department access to these records. You've got 24,731 VAERS reports filed by one of your pharmacies. 74 people are dead. 576 are permanently disabled. 310 have had their lives threatened. 758 were hospitalized, and 3,136 required an emergency room visit. Of those 24,731, 2,377 were children under the age of 18. I pulled the reports just recently out of MedAlerts. It's a search engine. Anybody can do it. The last report filed was on 9/28/2023. A 36-year-old female in California took a Pfizer shot and got chest discomfort, chest pain, dyspnea, flushing. 77-year-old male, 9/28/2023, got the RSV vaccine and had a sleep disorder and a tremor. A 82-year-old male in California, 9/27/2023. This one's really disturbing. COVID shot with Moderna, the new one, as well as the influenza shot. Extra dose administered. This is what the write-up says. Patient was given the flu and Spikevax twice. The first shot was given on 9/20/2023 and the second shot 9/27. The residence coordinator did not recall him getting any shots, and patient was administered another dose. However, it was later discovered the patient had received it already. Do you know about that? Does the pharmacy know? Are you holding them accountable for that problem? The next report, 70-year-old female, 9/27/2023. This was a Pfizer shot that caused flushing, a rash, but there's no manufacturer. I know that's a Pfizer shot because that's a Pfizer lot. How come there's an administrative error on this VAERS report that's filed? 82-year-old male in California, again, 9/27/2023, RSV shot called fatigue and pain in extremity. Here's another problem. 30-year-old female, 9/26/2023, the brand new Moderna shot and the flu block quadrivalent caused pain in extremity and swelling. Again, here's another problem with injection site and swelling and a hemorrhage. 69-year-old female in California at a pharmacy, 9/26/2023. Right after the shot, I gave the shot, the site of administration became swollen and the blood was more than usual. The Band-Aid got soaked and blood was running through her arm. I cleaned it with the cotton swab and immediately the bleeding stopped. And she called the person the next day for information. Here's the last one here.
10 seconds.
9/26/2023, a little 7-year-old boy took the influenza shot and fainted. I suggest you put a committee together to investigate these VAERS reports, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
All right, this is the moderator. Our next individual has requested public comment. Anais Anton, and Anais, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you are unmuted.
Hi, my name is Inez Anton. I'm a specialty pharmacist. I'm a California licensed specialty pharmacist. I just want to thank you to the Board of Pharmacy for listening to our comments over the previous meetings and for taking into consideration making permanent regulation for remote processing. The amendment to Section 4071.1 is thorough and inclusive. It's very specific and clearly describe our duties and tasks that we perform as a specialty pharmacist on a daily basis. Hopefully, there will be a resolution during today and tomorrow's meeting. We are looking forward to implementing it soon in the near future for the benefit of our patients. Once again, thank you so much for your hard work, efforts, and time.
Thank you for the comments.
All right, this is the moderator. Our next individual who has requested public comment, Diane Przyspiorowski. And Diane, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Everyone, appreciate the opportunity to provide public comment. I am the executive director of the California Orthopedic Association. We represent about 2,000 orthopedic surgeons throughout California. I wanted today to make the board aware of a very critical problem that our patients are having in gaining access to narcotic medications for post-surgical pain management. We typically see a problem with the availability of common pain medications for these post-op patients in December, when pharmacies seem to reach their maximum allocation for dispensing these narcotic medications. But this year, the problem seems to be more severe and starting earlier. I'm particularly getting complaints from the Santa Cruz and Riverside areas. Our surgeons have staff, they electronically submit these prescriptions for their surgical patients. Pharmacy responds, they do not have availability of that medication. Surgeon tries to approach another pharmacy, gets the same response. It's really becoming a critical problem for surgical patients. And of course, we can't take patients to surgery without some pain meds after their surgery. So I did send in a question to your inspectors, hoping to get a response back, but the physicians in the community really need some recommendation from the Board of Pharmacy as to how to handle this seemingly shortage for, again, common narcotic pain meds for post-surgical patients. And I just wanted to take this opportunity today to make you aware of this problem. And if there's any follow-up that the board could do with us, I'd be happy to work with you, schedule a call with our doctors so that we could work together to try to get to the bottom of the problem. As I said, I did send in an inquiry to ask your inspectors and would be hoping to get a response back. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments.
All right, this is a moderator. One more comment from Sandra. And Sandra, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right, and you are unmuted.
I'm not going to comment. Thank you.
Oh, I apologize. All right, in that case, it appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate that. With that, any member comments before we move on? Maria, go ahead. Then Nicole.
I'll say one thing and see if Nicole has the other before, because I have two areas I think I'd like to add to a future agenda. I'd like to learn a little bit more about the wholesalers process in determining the ordering levels by pharmacists. I know that that is an issue across the country to help with the opioid crisis, but I am concerned about limits and access. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that.
Yes, absolutely. I do agree. I am a little afraid of that issue being such a broad federal issue. However, I think we could definitely try to at least ask some questions. So, as a licensing agency for those wholesalers. So, where do you fit appropriate that would be an enforcement? Your committee, Maria, maybe actually not a bad place. So, if you are interested in it, they may fit into your committee.
Certainly, I think we could do some fact finding.
All right, if that's okay with you, that would be great. With that, Nicole next.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I also wanted to comment on that and say that, yeah, it's been a big problem. It's not just narcotics. I'm seeing it a lot in the transgender community, trying to get testosterone. It keeps coming up. It just kind of all over the place. And it seems like the last year, it's been much worse. So definitely think that's something that we should address. Also wanted to mention the comment about maybe an in-between kind of licensure for retirees or some kind of alternative. I think that's definitely something worth exploring. Maybe it's not specific just to retirees. Maybe if someone is going to, let's say, going to be a caregiver for a year, they know they're not going to use their license. Is there a way we can kind of pause them? So maybe something for the licensing committee to consider.
Sure, I can definitely work with Anne. I know we have very specific statute, I believe, related to these licensures. So I will definitely work with Anne and explore if there's any opportunities we might be able to provide. With that, next was Jesse. Jesse?
Hi, thank you, Sung. Yeah, I was just going to mention the retiree license. I think that's something that's come up a couple times in our last few meetings, in addition to like the status, but also the fees. So I would definitely like to see that as a future agenda item as well.
Sounds good. Just to add for Nicole's comments, anecdotally, I did also notice that extremely high increase in drug shortages across the board of not just controlled substances, but literally the most random drugs that I've never had issue getting, that we've had such back orders and shortages across, as far as I know, the whole region, area, the country, the state. So it's something that I think maybe we could just at least ask to see what's going on to our wholesaler counterpart. Maybe there is some explanation. Maybe I just didn't look far enough, but I would like to learn more about it. To add to the more plate for you, Chair Serpa, if that could be something you could also look at. Overall drug shortages that is happening across the spectrum, including inpatient and outpatient setting. that would be lovely.
Certainly, I think we keep those two issues separate, but we can look at both issues in enforcement.
Sounds good. Next is KK.
Thank you, President. Oh, just a follow-up question to what inquiry Maria had. Really would like to know what set of timelines the manufacturers have to increase the quota, for the pharmacies, because that doesn't also seem to be a set timeline, 3 business day, 5 business day. I don't know if there is any standards. I would like to learn about that also if that exists.
KK, we're talking about wholesaler quota on the limitation of controlled substance ordering, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
So I'm just want to know if there is a set of timeline that wholesalers follow, and if there is none, is it something we can think about?
Oh, they'll probably tell you it's proprietary information or something, but at least I'm sure we can ask. All right, Maria disappeared, but I would assume that as she is agreeing to it. So for some reason, her camera turned off from my side. All right, any other comments before we move on? Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful comments. Next is agenda item 3, recognition and celebration of pharmacists licensed in California for 40 years or more. I'm hoping Vicky would raise her hand if she's still going to be in attendance. At the board's recognition of pharmacists licensed in California for over 40 years is posted on our website, and pharmacists are provided with a certificate when they reach this significant milestone. Do we have any pharmacists present in Sacramento? Or do we have any Go ahead, Anne.
It's just going to say none in Sacramento.
Okay. Well, if you go to Sacramento in person, we do provide a pin for you. It's a very nice looking pin. I wish to have it one day. And it's a lovely thing to have. So with that, moderator, I asked if you can open up our Q&A feature. I know Vicky has already raised her hand, so I'm excited that I think she is here for that. So moderator, if you could open up the line.
This is the moderator. Once again, if you'd like to make a comment for this item, I've opened up the Q&A feature, or you can use the raise hand, and audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, I'll go ahead and unmute you, Vicky.
Thank you. Hi. I'm very proud that I've had my license for over 40 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any quick word of wisdom for all of us, any one of us, or overall?
I think pharmacy is a great field. I've had a wonderful career. Those of you that know me know that I've done a lot of different kind of innovative things that I'm very proud of. And I just always tell students it just goes by so fast that before they know it, they'll be in my place in like 2070. So
so well, hopefully we'll have a world by then as well. So thank you so much.
I hope
Vicky.
so. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks for joining this segment of our meeting.
Yeah,
you're the first one that showed up on WebEx. So you're going to be always the first one that is recognized for 40 years of pharmacist dedication on WebEx. So thank you, Vicky. All right. We're ready to move on. And moving on to the next agenda item is agenda item 4, approval of board meeting minutes. Included in the meeting materials are draft minutes for our couple of meetings we've had. We'll take them in order included on the agenda. As we begin, I will first ask for questions or comments or motions for draft minutes for August 30th. As you know, that is a very, very quick, that was a quick emergency meeting that we had to have. So if anyone could hopefully make a motion to approve the minutes.
Hey,
Sung, it's
Sam.
Jessie. I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thank you,
This is
Jessie.
Nicole. I'll second.
Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it. Any other comments? Ready for a vote? Jessie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Public comment. Public comment. Sarah. Jumping the gun here.
All right, this is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. And while we're waiting for WebEx attendees, I just want to confirm that there's no public comment in Sacramento.
No public comment in Sacramento.
Thank you, Anne. Just for efficiency's sake, would you just interrupt us, Anne? I'm gonna just
Yes, moving forward, if there appears to be public comment in Sacramento, I'll make a note.
thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, and this is the moderator. It appears there are no requests for public comment on this item. Would you
Thank
like me to
so
close that Q&A?
Sure, thank you. With that, we'll go for a vote. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Renee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Indira, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And Jose is still not here, right, Sarah? So I'll go to KK. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Nicole, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jason, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion passes. Next is draft minutes for our September 12th board meeting. I welcome your comments and will also entertain a motion to approve the minutes if you believe such action is appropriate, or any comments or amendments you'd like to make.
This is Nicole. I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Nicole. Anyone second Nicole's motion?
This is Jesse. I second the motion.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it. And with that, we'll go for public comment in WebEx. Sarah?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you, Sarah. And while I'm calling for the vote, maybe you can try to promote panelists so we can get going for the next agenda item. All right, next is Jesse. How do you vote? Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Renee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Indira, how do you vote? Oh, I think you're muted. Oh,
Yes.
all right. Thank you, Indira. KK, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Jason. How do you vote? Thank you. And I vote yes. The motion passes. Next agenda item, it's an exciting presentation for me at least. It's a pharmacist sexual and reproductive healthcare services in California, recent research findings. As you may recall, as part of the board's October 2022 meeting, oh my gosh, it feels like forever ago, we received a presentation on research underway on pharmacist furnished HIV prevention and reproductive services health in California. With the research now completed, I am pleased to welcome Dr. Betty Dong, Dr. Lorianne DeMartini, and Dr. Sally Raffi to present the findings from this very important research. If all of you are ready, the floor is yours. Thank you guys for coming.
Hello, everyone. This is Lorianne DeMartini doing a sound check. Can you all hear me? I'm seeing
Yes, we
some
can.
audience.
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, thank you to the Board of Pharmacy for asking us to come back and to present our research findings. The slide deck in front of us on my screen anyway is a little truncated. I don't know if you can see the full slide. If you can, just let me know.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, it must be then my computer. Anyway, hello everyone. I'm Dr. Lorianne DiMartini, CEO of the California Society of Health System Pharmacists, and I have the privilege of kicking off this presentation on our research findings related to attitudes, challenges, and opportunities for pharmacists delivered sexual and reproductive health services in California. The findings are the work of many individuals and organizations who are dedicated to improving access to quality of care provided by California pharmacists. As we know, pharmacists are underutilized healthcare practitioners. Recent legislation has provided opportunities for California pharmacists to more fully engage with their communities, or as we indicate, coming out from behind the counter, to promote access and care for sexual and reproductive health services. If we could go to the next slide, please. Setting the stage. Well, as the president indicated, this is an encore presentation, as that we've been asked to come back and to discuss the actual findings of our research. It was just a little over a year ago, on October 25th, 2022, members of the research team from UCLA Hub of Health Intervention, Policy and Practice, the Southern California HIV/AIDS Policy Research Center, and UC Berkeley provided an overview of the proposed California pharmacist study. The study, entitled Pharmacists Furnished HIV Prevention and Reproductive Health Services in California, was designed as a mixed method study, including qualitative and quantitative measures as well as timelines. Today's presentation will provide an overview of the California Pharmacist Study findings. We hope through our presentation of the findings, the Board of Pharmacy may identify opportunities to further its involvement in advancing access to quality care provided by pharmacists. On behalf of the research team and multiple organizations involved in this research, we are so appreciative of the Board of Pharmacy's visionary leadership and support to align pharmacists' education and training with unmet healthcare needs and ultimately increase access to those services provided by qualified pharmacists. Next slide, please. And as you will see, there were a number of organizations that have been identified as involved as researchers on this study, and we did publish a policy position earlier in 2023. Next slide, please. So the primary speakers, I have the privilege of kicking it off, but the primary speakers that you're going to be hearing from are Dr. Betty Dong and Dr. Sally Raffi. Dr. Betty Dong is a professor of clinical pharmacy and family community medicine at UCSF Schools of Pharmacy and Medicine. She's a pharmacist specialist in HIV care at Sacramento San Francisco General Hospital and a senior clinician for the CDC HRSA funded National PrEP and PEP telephone consult service. Dr. Sally Raffi, who was also present at the Board of Pharmacy meeting back in October of 2022 to provide her input, is the founder of the Birth Control Pharmacist and a pharmacist specialist at UC San Diego Health. Next slide, please. So before we go into the specific findings related to HIV preventative care and provision of contraceptive care, I want to share a little bit about our survey respondents. We actually came really close to our goal of 1,000 pharmacists response, with a noted and validated sample of 919 responses. The majority of the respondents identified as cisgender women with a median age of 39. 84% are currently practicing pharmacists, and I don't think it's surprising to note that half of the pharmacists currently or most recently worked at pharmacies in Los Angeles County, 29%, or the San Francisco Bay Area, 23%. Aside from the three most common types of pharmacies, community, hospital, or clinic and care, 13% of the participants worked in other settings, such as mail order, home care, compounding, assisted living. And among those that worked in community settings, 60% were at chains, national or state chains, while 38% were at independent pharmacies, and 2% were noted as none of the above. Just a note on our data. The geographical data is based on the pharmacy zip code, not the individual's residence code. Also for San Francisco Bay Area, we included 7 counties: Alameda, Contra Costa, Marin, San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Solano. On the gender denominator, we excluded missing or prefer not to say, which was approximately 12% of the sample. So I have the pleasure at this point, next slide, please, to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Betty Dong. Thank you.
Just in case, Dr. Dong, you're speaking, you're muted. Hello?
This is the moderator, Dr. Dong. Oh, wait, looks like you unmuted. Oh, and then you muted again. You'll want to click that microphone icon.
I think you're up. There you are. We can hear you
Now
now.
we can
Dr.
hear you.
Dong.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I always have problems with logistics. Anyway, thank you for the invitation. And I am one of the pharmacists who've been in practice for more than 40 years, like Vicki. So I'm pleased to be here to present some of this data. And I think we're going to start off with the first slide. If you can go to the next slide. Just to talk about the landscape where we are with regards to HIV pre-exposure and post-exposure prophylaxis. I think we all remember that Senate Bill 159 was actually approved in 2019 that allowed pharmacists to independently prescribe HIV post-exposure prophylaxis and 60 days of HIV PrEP or pre-exposure prophylaxis without a prescription from the outside provider. This legislation enabled pharmacists to use their clinical expertise to expand access to PEP and PrEP outside traditional clinical settings to achieve the CDC's End the HIV Epidemic. Pharmacists could easily actually qualify for this authority by completing a 90-minute training program approved by the Board of Pharmacy or an equivalent curriculum-based program from an accredited school of pharmacy and achieving a 70% passing score on an assessment exam. Despite this advantage for pharmacists, uptake in pharmacies across the state has been generally low, and you can see that a study 2 years after approval of SB 159 found a 2.9% prescribed PrEP under this legislation. There are many barriers that have been identified, and we're going to discuss some of the updated barriers using this study data. So can I go to the next slide, please? Keep going. So I want to start off with some of the good news first. So here you can see that most pharmacists, 92%, have actually heard about PEP and PrEP, and 72% knew about SB 159. And fewer pharmacists, only 62%, heard of SB 409, which allowed pharmacists to conduct CLIA waiver tests, including HIV. The sad news is that only 29% of practicing licensed pharmacy took advantage of PEP and PrEP training to utilize SB 159. Next slide, please. So when pharmacists were asked, do pharmacists at your pharmacy currently initiate HIV PEP or PrEP as authorized by SB 159? Looking at this graph, you can see first for PrEP that only 11% of pharmacists identified the use of SB 159, and 20% did not know whether their pharmacies actually initiated PEP or PrEP. So on the right-hand side, you see that similar findings, 13% knew about PEP being dispensed at their pharmacy, while 20% did not. And so for PrEP, there were more community pharmacists that knew about PrEP dispensing, and for PEP, more hospitals actually recognized dispensing. So next slide, please. So keep going. So when we look at the attitudes of pharmacists, I want to first orient you to the next few slides. So for each of the statements on the left, you can see that the blue, the dark blue, and the light blue bars indicate agree and strongly agree, whereas the orange and the red indicate disagree or strongly disagree. So what we find here are some important things about what pharmacists believe. It was encouraging to find that pharmacists thought that pharmacy dispense PEP and PrEP provision is important. 96% felt this way, and they felt that providing this service was a valuable job for HIV prevention. 95% of pharmacists felt this. And encouragingly, 81% of pharmacists were willing to prescribe PEP to their pharmacy clients. But the discouraging information is that only 50% were confident in their ability and their knowledge to prescribe PEP. So next slide. So few pharmacists had moral or religious objections to prescribing PrEP. You can see that 67% stated that PrEP did not increase riskier sexual behavior. And this finding has been validated in other studies. Likewise, less than 10% of respondents felt that prescribing PrEP would mean endorsing a lifestyle that they don't support or would violate their religious beliefs. Next slide. So when we ask pharmacists about the 60-day initiation period, you can see that 42% agreed that this duration of PEP dispensing was not enough to ensure referral to a primary care provider. I would just point out that 60 days of PrEP is inconsistent with national CDC PrEP guidelines, which recommend at least 90 days at initiation. And hopefully, I know that Senate Bill 339 that's in that you are being reviewed, if passed, will provide the 90 days of PrEP, and more importantly, provide payment for pharmacist services and labs. So next slide, please. Now, this is an interesting slide. When we asked pharmacists whether they felt like their pharmacies were prepared to implement SB 159, the majority, 59%, believed their pharmacy was not equipped or ready. Only 41% felt that the pharmacy was ready to start. And this was a smaller proportion of pharmacists here. These were the ones that really were not actually prescribing PrEP or PEP. Next slide. So what are some of the challenges and the barriers to PrEP services? And so on this slide, the most difficult barrier is listed at the bottom. So at the top is the easiest or the least difficult barrier, going down to the bottom, which is the most difficult. So you can see that only 19% of pharmacists said that selecting the appropriate PrEP regimen was difficult. And this is probably pretty accurate because most of the PrEP regimens are CDC guided. And then 26% said it was difficult to assess PrEP eligibility. And these days, if anybody asks for PrEP, they are automatically considered eligible. And then it went down to the most difficult was allocating staff time for PrEP services, since reimbursement for the clinical pharmacist services were not provided, and only the medication is covered by insurance. So next slide, please. So I'm going to skip this slide here because if we go back to the other slide looking at time, this slide looks at those pharmacies which are not offering pharmacist prescribed PrEP services. So the question was, which of the following would you say is the main barrier to implementing pharmacist prescribed PrEP at your pharmacy? And they were asked to select only one distractor. So you can see at the top two, which comprise 54.4% of respondents, was really not enough staff time and no reimbursement for furnishing PEP services. Then down to not enough demand. And you can see the other barriers, which were a minority of the respondents. So we go to the next slide. You could see that there was some differences in reported barriers to PrEP implementation besides respondents working in chain community pharmacies and those at independent pharmacies. For example, 53% of those at chain pharmacies selected insufficient staff time as the main barrier to pharmacist-initiated PrEP, compared to 18% of those at independent pharmacies. Whereas respondents at independent pharmacies more often selected lack of insurance coverage for PrEP services or not enough demand among clients as the primary reasons. And these findings, although not shown, were similar for providing post-exposure prophylaxis. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, California pharmacists believe that provision of PEP and PrEP is important and valuable, and they're willing and able to do this. However, a small percentage have taken advantage of SB 159, and implementation may be hindered by policy and organizational level barriers, including insufficient staff time and lack of payment for clinical services. Next slide. So this slide identifies some policy recommendations and strategies to increase SB 159 uptake. So efforts to streamline some of the current requirements and incentivize implementation through increased reimbursement are really needed to leverage the potential of pharmacies to contribute to expanding access to these services. So on this policy recommendations, we really would urge payment for pharmacist-delivered services, which was a major barrier. We want to reconsider the 60-day limit to make them more in line with CDC guidelines. And we want to make sure that pharmacists know about training programs that they can use to implement SB 159 and to develop resources pharmacists can utilize to refer patients for follow-up care. And lastly, we really want to raise public awareness about these pharmacist expanded services. And next slide. So these are some of the steps for implementation to really consider and support SB 339 passage to provide payment for pharmacist clinical services and 90 days of PrEP, and to have more pharmacists undertake the training programs to implement PEP and PrEP under SB 159. I've listed some available training programs and also a resource, which is the National Clinicians PEP and PrEP telephone consult, which is a free service to help pharmacists with their needs to provide this service to patients. And with that, next slide, please. I'm going to turn this over to Sally.
Thanks.
Okay.
Betty, do you mind?
I think hearing a little echo, so if Dr. Dong if we can ask you to, yep, there we go. Go ahead,
Okay.
Dr. Raffi.
Great, thank you. All right, next slide, please. So here in California, pharmacists have been able to furnish contraception for many years. We've been able to do the emergency contraception for over 20 years now, since basically 2002, 2004, where there was a change, and the self-administered hormonal contraceptive since 2016. Next slide. When we asked the survey respondents, those specifically who were practicing in community pharmacies, how many of them offer the levonorgestrel emergency contraceptive pill without a provider's prescription? So whether the pharmacist themselves is furnishing it or they're selling it over the counter, and 79% said yes, they do, which is great. But we'd of course like to see this number closer to 100%. Next slide. When we asked them about the other emergency contraceptive pill, ulipristal acetate, which is available by prescription only, that number fell drastically to just 19% of pharmacists who were furnishing it, which is quite low. And that particular product is more effective than levonorgestrel emergency contraceptive in a lot of circumstances. So we would certainly like to encourage more pharmacists to furnish that. And with the hormonal contraceptives on the far left there, you can see about half of pharmacists were furnishing. Next slide. Among the pharmacies that were not furnishing hormonal contraceptive or not prescribing them, the commonly cited barriers were number one, inadequate staff time to add new services. And we know about the challenges on community pharmacy workflows and staff time and pressures and the walkouts that are happening this week and all the different things. So there's no surprise there that in many, especially of these chain pharmacies, that something's got to change to make space for this. Many people also said lack of knowledge and or training, which that is a little bit easier to address with training programs, 32%. No insurance coverage for the service. That's still being a really important factor for a lot of pharmacists. They want there to be payment for the service. And it's not only on the pharmacist side where, we want to see payment for services we're providing, but most of our patients have insurance, right? Most community members have insurance, and contraceptive services are covered part with no patient copay, and they should be able to use that insurance to see whichever type of provider they'd like for their contraception. So it doesn't make sense that if they go see a physician or a nurse practitioner, the visit is covered, but if they elect to come to the pharmacy and visit with their pharmacist for contraception, it's not covered, right? So that's a discrepancy that is problematic. But hopefully we'll see that largely being addressed with the new AB 317 that was just signed a couple weeks ago. Liability concerns, which we do address in the training program, and then low demand, that's part of it too. We know that there's still an opportunity to raise awareness in the community around the service. Next slide. Of the pharmacists that we surveyed, they overwhelmingly think that it's important to provide these services. So whether we're talking about emergency contraception or hormonal birth control, you can see 94%, 93% think it's very important that they participate in this. It's pretty strong in terms of confidence and knowledge around birth control, but then when it comes to prescribing, only about 61% are very confident or confident in that. Next slide. And most people we surveyed would prescribe to minors, which is a good thing because that is the evidence-based way of providing the service. Anybody who can physiologically benefit from it, whether that be an individual who's begun menstruating, so young person, adolescent, or it could be a transgender man who is ovulating and would still need potentially contraception. Those would all be circumstances, but in our research, we asked specifically about minors, and 75% of people were willing to prescribe to minors, which is good. There was a small percentage of people who felt like we should be getting parental consent, which is actually prohibited. This is very much protected, not only by HIPAA, but more specifically, even where we can provide records of other prescriptions to parents, we can't provide it around sexual and reproductive health services, and minors can consent to these procedures and services. Very, very small percentage, 9% of people who didn't want to prescribe because of religious beliefs. So the vast majority of people are not prescribing for other reasons, like we talked about, the workflow, the knowledge, the liability concerns, those types of things. Next slide. So the steps for implementation, it's fairly straightforward, you know, California being the first to have a specific policy allowing pharmacists to furnish or prescribe hormonal contraceptives. So if folks get the training in school, then they graduate ready to furnish. If not, they can complete a continuing education program. We have some available on our website. They can go through both for hormonal contraceptives and emergency contraception. Then they can just print the protocols from the Board of Pharmacy website. We have standard forms as well, and then they can get to promoting their service. We also maintain a directory similar to the one that the Board of Pharmacy maintains, but ours has a map feature where folks can find a pharmacy that's participating in offering this service, so they can get connected right away rather than visiting multiple pharmacies or calling multiple pharmacies to find one that offers it. Next slide. Switching gears to medication abortion. So this is a reproductive health service where pharmacists are now becoming much more involved finally. Next slide, because there was a change to the REMS back in January. Prior to January, mifepristone, which is the first of 2 medications taken for medication abortion, it was really limited, and only certified prescribers could actually dispense the product, which is really unlike other medications, right? And because of that, a lot of providers were not providing medication abortions because they didn't also want to have to worry about dispensing it. That's something they would rather leave to pharmacists to do. You know, that's our specialty. And so now that the REMS has been modified and pharmacies are able to dispense it, we're expecting to see a lot more providers providing medication abortions as well, because they can script out for it. Pharmacies do have to get certified in order to be able to dispense this drug. So even though it's not because it's such a dangerous medication or anything, but of course there are some different pressures around this medication. And so there are these additional steps of getting certified. And the certification process is basically just a form that the pharmacy fills out and submits to the manufacturer or distributor of the drug. And once approved, then they can order and stock the drug and dispense it. Certified pharmacies have to keep the prescriber agreements on file because we only want to dispense for patients where the prescription was written by a certified prescriber. And we have to document the NDC and lot number of the product that we're dispensing. And we do have to dispense within 4 days of receiving the prescription. Next slide. So a majority of the survey participants would be willing to fill a medication abortion prescription from a client who came to us from outside California, which is encouraging. We didn't actually ask if they would be willing to fill it for in-state Californians, but we can presume it's the same or higher. Next slide. And many support a future policy, so future state where we want to allow pharmacists to actually prescribe medication abortion. So 52% of our survey respondents were supportive of that. Next slide. And then we asked them more directly if they themselves would be willing to prescribe medication abortion if it was allowed, and 75% said they would. However, when we asked them about their confidence and their knowledge of medication abortion, it was a bit lower, as well as their confidence in their ability to prescribe it was a bit lower, you know, around the 40s. But given that this is a completely new service to pharmacies, they really don't have a lot of experience historically with these medications. I still think that's pretty higher than I expected, encouraging that pharmacists do have some knowledge around this. It's really easy to make continuing education programs available to them and incorporate this in the pharmacy curriculum, which we've started to do. We have a free continuing education program with UCSF that any pharmacist can go through. And we're hoping that the schools of pharmacy will begin incorporating this into their core curriculum. Next slide. So steps for implementation right now, any pharmacy who wants to become a dispenser of medication abortion, they just need to fill out the pharmacy agreement form and get set up to order and dispense the medication. So then we want them to stock the mifepristone, which has the REMS, as well as the misoprostol, and then just provide quality care. And we've got a couple of website resources for folks who want to learn more, with a link to the continuing education program I mentioned. And then our medication abortion care resources website has links to all the pharmacy agreements and more information about the REMS for anybody who's interested to learn more. Next slide. And recommendations coming out of this research, similarly to the HIV PrEP and PEP, we want to be sure that there's payment for pharmacist delivered services. That seems to be really critical for implementation. We want to make sure that the training programs are accessible to pharmacists, that they're aware of them and can take them in a way that works for them. We need to raise public awareness around pharmacist clinical services. And then more specifically for the contraceptive protocol, we would like to see the protocol expanded to include non-hormonal methods like the gel, diaphragm, and internal and external condoms, that if pharmacists could furnish those, it would really help with access. There's really no contraindications or safety concerns with doing that, but it would really make a big difference for access if we could prescribe those, so that there's in turn insurance coverage for them and accessibility for our patients. And looking to the future, where we would like a new authority for pharmacists to furnish medication abortion care as well. And I think that concludes our formal presentation, and we'd like to open it up to members of the board for questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raffi, Dr. Dong, and Dr. DeMartini. Great presentation. Really appreciate it. And for me personally, as a member of LGBT community, this topic is very important to me. Hopefully, we can continue to address two key highlights I feel like there is, which is pharmacists just don't feel like they have enough time to do it, yet they are the most accessible healthcare providers. And they really want to help. I'm hoping that there is something that we could continue to work on to address. And second is the payment parity, right? Hopefully AB 317 did pass and is signed, and we'll see how that works out for some of the services. But just, I think, to remind folks that California does seem to have one of the very broadest allowance for collaborative practice agreements. So hopefully there are some ambitious pharmacists out there that can really help to take care of the people, because this service, I think, can definitely improve public health and consumer protection. With that, members, any comments or questions for our presenters? I see Jesse's hand is raised. Sarah, could you switch back to our I have different webinar setup mode. If you could transition back to just a regular webinar. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yep, thank you so much for the presentation. I think a lot of the information is kind of consistent with what we've been hearing, just in terms of reimbursement and barriers to providing these services. My question is in regards to medication abortion services, and I'm not even sure that you have the information, but have you heard of an increase in pharmacies providing mifepristone now that there is the REMS allowance since this year? I haven't really heard anything about it, so I'm just curious if you all have heard anything.
Yeah, prior to the REMS change, it actually was prohibited for pharmacies to dispense this drug. So there was like no way for us to get involved and participate in this care. During the COVID-19 pandemic, there was an emergency allowance where mail order pharmacies could begin to dispense the drug to assist the clinics, because a lot of the clinics had transitioned to providing telehealth services and different things during the pandemic. And so mail order pharmacies were helping to mail out those medications. But it wasn't until this past January where they really opened up the REMS. We know many pharmacies that right away began to submit their applications to become certified pharmacies. And there are some certified pharmacies now that are dispensing it. We're going to see those numbers growing over time. And actually, we're just kicking off an initiative with the California Pharmacists Association and Birth Control Pharmacists, where we will be, over the next 5 years, really working on this, doing training and doing mini grants to pharmacies and implementation support to get more pharmacies dispensing medication abortion, because it's so important for timely access. But there are pharmacies that are doing it now, which is increase from zero.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all your hard work. This is great. And I look forward to seeing more information coming out. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Nicole?
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. I work in the LGBTQ community as well, so PEP and PrEP is a huge issue for us, so I'm really glad that you're taking this on. One thing I just wanted to bring up, I know you all mentioned SB 339, but I know it got extended to a 2-year bill, and there were some pretty significant changes made to the language, an amendment that I think we're now fighting against that needs to be changed, where the language was changed from equivalent treatment to alternative. And I believe that was being pushed by the drug manufacturers. So I was wondering if you could talk about any barriers that we're facing from, lobbying by the drug manufacturers, and what are the ways that we can kind of fight back against these changes.
I'm going to take a run at that. Thank you, Nicole, for the question. I think it's a really difficult question. Those amendments came in, from what we understand, they came in late. And the author, Senator Wiener, and we're obviously in support of the bill, pulled it because it was, in essence, as he says, going to undo a lot of the great work that Senate Bill 159 did. So the last time, and I meet regularly with our lobbyists, but the last time we discussed this week, in fact, is we're hoping that there's going to be some movement to address the significant concerns with those amendments. But I think we can all guess it really is a cloudy crystal ball in terms of where things are going to go.
Great, thank you for responding.
Thank you, Dr. DeMartini. Any other member comments before we open up for public comment? And any other closing? Well, no closing thoughts yet. So we'll just actually go for public comments as thank you for since we are a public agency, Dr. Dong, Dr. DeMartini, and Dr. Raffi, the board is required to provide an opportunity for public comment on each agenda item. The public comment is not intended to be a question and answer session. However, it's an opportunity for public comment on the information presented. But you are more than happy to answer to any questions or comments if you'd like to do so. So with that, Sarah, open up for public comment, please.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. And it looks like we do have a request from Richard Dang. And Richard, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Pharmacists Association. Thank you to Dr. Dong, Dr. Raffi, and Dr. DeMartini for running this project and presenting the results. Really great information that's in there that's going to be very helpful in all of our initiatives moving forward. I want to highlight and speak to 3 things that you had presented. One, really just emphasizing the differences found in the community and independent pharmacy settings that really matches the trends that is consistent with the survey results that the California Board of Pharmacy did on workplace conditions. So you're all aware of that. Second, we're very much looking forward to our mifepristone project, working with birth control pharmacists and Dr. Raffi to get more pharmacists and pharmacies certified to be able to provide that crucial medication over the next 5 years. So we're looking forward to that in 2024 and beyond. And then the third one is for, I think, Nicole's question, SB 339. While we can't speak to the specific strategy coming up, it is something that is going to be a priority in the upcoming year. SB 339 is co-sponsored by CPHA, and we're working very closely with the Senator's office to move that forward and Dr. DeMartini is correct in some of the amendments that were very unsavory, that we decided to hold the bill, and it is a top priority for us in the senator's office to move the bill forward in its original form to allow for increased access of the greater quantity duration for the medication for those communities that need it. So we're very much looking forward to the start of the second year of the session in 2024, and that will remain a top priority for our association to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Dr. Dang.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Oh, I apologize. We do have one more request for public comment. Look, Stephen Gray. And Stephen, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak in a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Opportunity to comment. First of all, my sincere congratulations and admiration for the study that was done and the presentation that was done, and everything I would like to do, anything I'd like to do to help further the goals and objectives and going forward. One of the things I would like to point out that has been a possible barrier to some of what you attend is that in the law that was adopted in SB 493 way back in 2013, and that you referred to as actually being effective in 2016 after the regulation with the protocol, is that that law deliberately used the word furnish instead of prescribe. And I noticed that during the presentation, you often interchange those words. But if you look at the law, and there is a difference between a pharmacist being able to furnish and a pharmacist being able to initiate or prescribe. And that is reflected in the definition of a prescription over in section 4040, where it references the word initiate to those sections of the law that allowed pharmacists to prescribe, by saying basically when a pharmacist initiates, they are prescribing. It does not reference any section of the law where it says furnish. And in fact, it does not even reference the new section of a provision in the law put in the Sunset Bill, which is 4052, where all pharmacists now have the potential of having an agreement with a prescriber to provide a collaborative practice agreement, if it is. So as part of, and this has come up with some of the insurance companies and the liability companies that say, well, the law in California doesn't really say that when a pharmacist furnishes that they're prescribing. So therefore it's not a prescription, therefore it's not covered because it wasn't issued by someone authorized to prescribe. Or worse yet, the liability insurance doesn't cover it because again, it wasn't issued. And it makes a difference in when a oral contraceptive is furnished by a pharmacist, technically as part of the agreement when we put through SB 493, it could not be refilled at another pharmacy because it wasn't a prescription. It could only be furnished by another qualified pharmacist at another pharmacy or go back to the original pharmacy. So I would suggest that as part of your project, we clean that all up and make it absolutely crystal clear that when pharmacists are initiating or when they're prescribing or when they're furnishing under the statutes and working under a collaborative practice agreement that is referenced in 4052, that it is in fact prescribing, therefore it is a legal prescription, therefore it is covered also by the liability insurance. And I'd be happy to work with anyone on the board or anyone else that help to point those out. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments, Dr. Gray.
All right, this is the moderator. Looks like we have another request for public comment from John Gray. One moment while I find you in the attendee list. There you are. Right, so you'll be given 3 minutes to speak in a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hi, this is John Gray, registered pharmacist with Kaiser Permanente. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. I just wanted to echo Steve Gray's comments that we would strongly encourage the board to look at cleaning up the definition of prescription in Business and Professions Code, section 4040, that specifies the conditions under which prescription issued by a pharmacist is in fact a valid prescription, as well as I think Steve also mentioned maybe 4052. We agree with Steve that does have the potential, and we think it is currently a barrier in some cases to pharmacists engaging in the really broad collaborative practice agreements that Dr. O mentioned earlier, that President O mentioned earlier. So definitely encourage the board to look at that and address it as soon as possible, perhaps in sunset sooner if possible. Thanks very much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you for the comments, Dr. Gray. Another Dr. Gray.
All right, this is a moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you so much. With that, members, any other thoughts or comments? And anyone has any thoughts or comments for our lovely presenters? I'm going to open up for our presenters to give any closing thoughts or remarks. For Dr. DeMartini, Dr. Raffi, Dr. Dong, anything you would like to share with us before you go? Thank you again.
I think, speaking on behalf of the multiple organizations that have been involved and the multiple people, it's hard to believe it's going on 2 years, is that we are really appreciative of the Board of Pharmacy's visionary leadership in this area of working with hopefully the research findings that you have been presented today to see opportunities to enhance access to care. I mean, those figures that both Dr. Dong and Dr. Raffi presented, we have more than 90% of pharmacists who say we want to do this. We're ready to do this, but we need help. And President O, I heard you say it loud and clear. Let's figure out a way that we can make it easy for pharmacists to care for their communities. And again, thank you. And to my co-presenters, Dr. Raffi and Dr. Dong, if you had any additional comments, I didn't want to speak on behalf of you.
I appreciate all the comments. I just wanted to add that it has been about 7 years since we first drafted or finalized our hormonal contraception protocol. And it is a perfect time to revisit that and add in some of those clarifications and expand access to some of the methods we mentioned. So if the board is open to that, I would love to be involved. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. All right. Have a great rest of your afternoon. I think this is a good time, even for a quick break for our members and for the public. So we're going to take about 10-minute break, and we'll come back at 3:30. Well, I'm sorry, not 3:30. 2:35. We'll come back at 2:35. See you in a little bit. Okay, everyone, hopefully we'll get back on it. And let's take a quick roll call. Starting with Jesse.
Sung, I'm here.
Hi, Jesse. Renee?
Hello, I am here.
Hi, Renee. India? Jira might not be back, but it's okay. KK?
Yes, sir. Present.
Hi, KK. Maria?
Back.
Hi, Maria. Nicole?
Yeah.
Hi, Nicole. Jason?
Here.
Hi, Jason, and I am here. Indira hopefully can just let us know when she's back. So let's get right on it. Agenda item 6, Enforcement and Compounding Committee. I will turn the meeting over to our chair, Maria Serpa, to provide a report on committee's effort. Maria, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, President O. On behalf of the committee, I'm pleased to provide the board with a summary of the committee's efforts at our July 18th and October 19th meetings. I want to thank my fellow members, that's Vice Chair Renee Barker, Indira Cameron Banks, Sung Oh, and Jig Patel. The first item, A, is presentation on the disciplinary case process by the Office of the Attorney General. As a part of the actions undertaken by the board to meet its consumer protection mandate, The board may refer a completed investigation to the Office of the Attorney General in instances where the investigation identifies egregious violations that warrant removal or restriction of the license. A review of the annual statistics reveal that the board referred 259 matters to the Attorney General's office last fiscal year, which is about 8% of our closed investigations. The data also reveals that 218 disciplinary matters were closed with outcomes including 59 revocations, 74 licenses placed on probation, 67 licenses being surrendered, and the public approval of 20 licenses. During the meeting, the committee received a presentation from Christina Jarvis and Nicole Trauma, Deputy Attorneys General, that serve as liaisons to the board on disciplinary case process. The presentation was excellent and covered several aspects of the process to ensure due process for licensees. Following the presentation, members received public comment from one individual suggesting that the board should resume its discussion on the use of pre-filing conferences. The presentation was very thorough, and I strongly suggest that members and the public review the presentation that is now posted on the board's website. It's part of the live streaming recording of the meeting. Members, do you have any questions or comments regarding the presentation? Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment in Sacramento?
No public comment in Sacramento.
Okay, so now let's move on to public comment on the presentation for those participating via WebEx.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Please do, thank you. Let's move on to the next item, which is B, presentation and discussion of the board's inspection program. Members, strategic objective 2.3 of the board's strategic plan calls for the completion of routine inspections of all licensed pharmacies at least every 4 years to proactively assess pharmacy operations and educate licensees. On an annual basis, the committee receives a presentation providing a summary information detailing accomplishments towards this objective. During the meeting, we received a very informative presentation from Julie Ansell, the board's Assistant Executive Officer. I commented during the meeting that I am very pleased to see progress is being made to meet the strategic objective, and I'm hopeful that it will be achieved by the next year's presentation and ongoing. I truly appreciate all the efforts of the field staff who perform these inspections. Members, as you may recall, this workload was established and performed within existing resources. During the meeting, we asked staff about the potential of incorporating a routine inspection for non-resident pharmacies, and were advised to date that staff have focused on achieving strategic objectives for resident pharmacies. Members, do you have any questions on the presentation or the information presented? I can't see you, so speak up if I don't call you. Otherwise, we'll move on. Is there any public comment in Sacramento?
No.
Okay, I think we're ready for public comment for people participating via WebEx.
This is the moderator. Once again, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Thank you. Let's move on to item C, presentation on the board citation and fine program. Consistent with strategic objective 2.2, on an annual basis, the committee receives a presentation on the citation and fine program that includes information on common violations. Generally, the information is shared during an annual presentation that is also included in the board's newsletter that is provided and education to licensees. About 33% of our investigations completed by the board result in an issuance of a citation. Reporting out this information provides valuable information to licensees on areas of operation that can result in a citation. The data presented during the meeting included information on the number of citations issued under the board's new authority as included in Business and Professions Code 4317.5 A and B. The presentation slides are included as attachment 3. Members, do you have any questions or comments on the citation and fine presentation? Okay, any comments from public in Sacramento?
No.
Great, thank you. We'll continue with public comment from WebEx.
This is a moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Please do, thank you. We'll zip along with the next item, D, presentation and discussion on quality assurance reports received pursuant to California Code of Regulations, Section 1711F, relating to the use of automated drug dispensing systems, drug delivery systems. As detailed in the meeting materials, the board is required to submit a report to the legislature on the regulation of automated drug delivery systems as a part of the upcoming sunset evaluation process. As I stated during the committee meeting, to ensure that we have time for discussion and input in advance of the report deadline, I appreciate staff presenting the information and providing members with an opportunity to provide feedback to ensure that we have all the data needed and recommendations ready for the legislature. The presentation was comprehensive and I believe served as a great starting point for our assessment. As I noted during the committee meeting, this was the committee's first opportunity to review the ADDS program report, and we will have some time before the report is due to the legislature. During the coming months, I will be working with staff on some other elements that I think should be brought forward in consideration in the report. There may be some other data points as well that may be helpful. During the committee's discussion, I shared my concern about what appears to be a lack of reporting by some hospitals using unlicensed ADDSs and requested that staff determine if there are any additional means we can use to remind hospitals of reporting requirements, either through incorporating the requirement on the renewal form or some other means. Public comment was received suggesting following submission of the report to the legislature, the board should consider updating its regulation to remove the requirement for two-way reports stemming from the use of automated drug delivery devices to be reported to the board. Members, do you have any comments or questions on the presentation and the information? Okay, any comments from Sacramento?
No.
Thank you. Moderator, we're ready for public comments via WebEx.
This is a moderator, and once again, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And it does look like we have a request for comment from John Gray. One moment. There you are. All right. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank you very much. This is John Gray. I'm a registered pharmacist with Kaiser Permanente. Thank you, Chair Serpa, for calling out the comment we made during the July meeting. We did make a recommendation to the committee at that time that you all consider, and the board, you the committee and the board consider whether it might be appropriate to sunset the specific ADDS error reporting requirement after you make your report to the legislature. As I think many members of the board know, the requirement in regulation to report ADDS errors comes out of Business and Professions Code 4427.8 B3, in which the legislature directs the board to report on public safety concerns related to the use of ADDS devices. Now that AB 1286 has passed, and there will be a broad medication error reporting requirement for community pharmacies, we think it really is prudent for the board to revisit what it wants to do with this requirement to report errors stemming from ADDSs. Certainly, once you stand up the requirement under 1286, you'll be getting those errors reported via that route from community pharmacies. And as you know, hospital pharmacies have significant patient safety and medication safety obligations under the MERP portion of the GACL survey, as well as Joint Commission. So it's beginning to feel more and more like this requirement to separately report ADDS errors ought to be revisited after you make a report to the legislature. Thanks for thinking about it.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Gray.
Apologize, I was muted while I was speaking. This is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Please do. Thank you. Since we had public comment, members, do you have any additional comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item E, enrolled or recently signed legislation impacting the practice of pharmacy. Members, as I begin the review of the committee's discussion on legislation, I would like to confirm that everyone received the written comments this last week. Specifically, 3 comments were received regarding AB 782 and 1 comment letter on AB 1286. If you did not receive them, if you want to say something, otherwise we're going to move on. So let's begin with all the legislation. We'll start with AB 663. You may recall that the board established a support position on this measure. It expands provisions for the use of mobile units that are deployed as an extension of a county-owned or authorized entity pharmacy. Under the provisions of this measure, which are effective January 1st, 2024, the pharmacist in charge will have the authority to allow for the use of more than 1 mobile unit. Further, such mobile units will have the ability to carry controlled substances approved by the FDA for the treatment of opioid use disorders. The committee agreed with staff recommendations, staff recommended implementation activities, including updating the frequently asked questions related to this program, highlighting the changes in the board's pharmacy law webinar, and changes included in a future edition of the script. Members, do you have any comments or questions on the activities that will be undertaken by the board? Okay, in Sacramento, any comments?
No.
We're ready for WebEx comments on this Assembly Bill 663.
All right, this is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and it looks like we do have a request from Stephen Gray. All right, Stephen, and you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank you again. I do have a comment. It seems clear that the intent of these mobile units is to provide, is to take care to the patient or the patient's community, wherever or whatever that may be. And the law now will allow those mobile units to carry and dispense controlled substances, as I understand it. And that raises a question about reporting to cures or even just the basic record keeping. The law in California and the law both in the Health and Safety Code and in the Regular Business and Professions Code requires that the pharmacy have a record of the patient's address for every prescription. So in the FAQs or in your discussions, maybe at your next meeting, since many of these patients don't have an address, don't have a home, what should be reported? What should be kept in the record? What should the location, corner of Olive and Main, where they find these tents? I mean, wherever it is, or should it be the address of the parent pharmacy that is associated with the mobile units? What should be used as the address to meet the record keeping and the cures reporting requirements? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gray.
All right, this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please do. Thank you. Members, since we had public comment, do you have any additional comments? Okay, let's move on to AB 782. AB 782 would have exempted the definition of compounding the adding of a flavoring agent. As the governor vetoed this measure, we did not discuss it at the committee meeting. I note that we did receive written comments before this meeting, so I've included this bill on my verbal report. Some of the written comments received may indicate that a specific compounding license is necessary to provide flavoring to oral products. I wanted to clarify that this does not require any special pharmacy license to add flavoring. I'd also like to note that some of the written comments may be more related to the regulatory activities of the board regarding USP and compounding. The board is not moving towards eliminating the practice of adding flavoring. We are currently updating the regulations regarding compounding to harmonize with USP updates that were effective today. Congratulations, it's only been about a million years. The regulatory process is ongoing. So our board's regulatory process is ongoing regarding harmonizing our regulations with USP. I'm sure that these discussions will continue during the regulatory hearing and the regulatory process. Members, do you have any questions or comments on 782? Seeing none, is there any comment in Sacramento?
No.
Great, thank you. Moderator, we're ready for public comment via WebEx.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Please do, thank you. The next measure is Assembly Bill 1286. This is the board's patient safety measure. As the committee materials suggest, there are a number of provisions contained in this measure. The committee agreed with the implementation activities identified by staff and the development of FAQs that cover the various provisions within this measure. As stated during the meeting, I believe the piece that requires the most discussion and education is related to the process that will be used by the board to approve an entity to receive the medication error reports. I note that until the board approves such an entity, such medication error reports will not begin. I would like to also remind members that prior discussions have involved the board using a single entity for the medication error reporting to allow for the aggregation of information. Moving forward, staff will be arranging presentations from various organizations that could potentially be considered by the board as an entity responsible for receiving and evaluating medication error reports. The board should also release an alert regarding the effective date of the medication error reporting requirement. The committee also agreed that updates to the self-assessment form and the board's pharmacy law webinar are appropriate as is an article in the future issue of the script. Also during our meeting, as a part of public comment received, a commenter suggested that the board must promulgate a regulation to approve the entity to receive the medication error reports. It's my understanding that following the meeting, Council clarified that the selection of an entity would most likely be done through the state contracting process and not through regulations. Prior to this meeting, we received a comment letter requesting an enforcement delay on the measures requirement that chain community pharmacies be staffed at all times with at least one clerk or pharmacy technician fully dedicated to performing pharmacy-related services. The commenter explained that their organization and the industry in general is already experiencing a stressed job market for tech and clerk positions, and they expressed concern about their ability to hire the large numbers of pharmacy technicians and clerks that would be needed to bring on board by January 1st to achieve compliance with AB 1286's staffing floor requirements. Members, do you have any questions or comments on this specific concern or any of the additional activities that should be taken by the board to implement the many provisions of this measure, AB 1286? So members, I'm really looking for your comments regarding the letter and anything else that's in the measure itself.
So sorry to interrupt. I think Jose has just joined. So Sarah, if you could please make him into a panel. Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, Nicole.
No problem. Members, do you have any comments regarding this bill, particularly the issue regarding a potential enforcement delay that what the letter was requesting?
Hi, Maria. It's Nicole. I don't know if you can see our hand raised. But I wanted to say I think it would be reasonable to have a delay in enforcement to allow people to make arrangements to be able to meet the new requirements. This bill is meant to help pharmacists and help with staffing, and we don't want to, unintentionally make it worse by forcing a timeline that isn't reasonable. So I think that seems very, very reasonable.
Thank you.
I
Say, oh, go ahead, Jesse.
No, I was just going to say the same thing. I think this bill is very extensive. I think a lot of the chains, even just updating policies and procedures is pretty extensive at this point. But while being compliant with SB 1442 means that there should be staff available, at the end of the day, that will ultimately create a hole in other departments within retail chains if that clerk is going to be just designated at the pharmacy the entire time. And so just to give them enough time to really go through the hiring process and be as thorough as possible, I think a 6-month delay would be reasonable.
I would say, in general, I agree with that. Just although I would like to add, in the past couple years, or actually longer, with SB 362, which was a quota bill, as well as SB 1442, there has been some, in my humble opinion, blatant disregard for certain provisions of those laws, and I think those are still being ignored by some in the marketplace, almost, it seems like. So I would respectfully just say that I think every situation, I think, warrants its own investigation and understanding of the circumstances. I think I'm, in general, very supportive of providing some flexibility and time to the organizations who are committed in really making improvements for patient care, but with that caveat saying that I just will not tolerate any blatant disregard or complete ignoring of this law's existence. So I think we just have to land somewhere in between, because we just also cannot have this be. I think unfortunately, when we have a very formal delay, it provides a feeling that we're not going to look at it at all. And I think I want to make it very clear, I don't think that's what we're going to do. I think we're going to look at it in those each circumstances and try to understand and make sure that everyone is trying. And I think the effort is good enough for us to say that, okay, well, that's okay. But I just don't think I would be supportive of a company's completely ignoring this law either. So I think that's where we have to figure out a path forward.
President O, it's Nicole. Would it, I don't know if this is possible, but what comes to mind for me is we still keep the same implementation date, but we do say a 6 months or whatever delay in enforcement. So we won't give you a citation for it, but if you were to be have your inspection, we would note if you were in compliance. So we would start talking about it, getting the facts out there, but we're giving people that tiny window grace period. Would that maybe feel better to you, that it was more in line with what you're saying?
Well, just to be, I guess, kind of some historical information, because it's something very similar to what both of you are saying. Historically, the board has focused primarily on education when there's a new law. So there's a period of time where the focus is on education. They still review it, and they do review the issues by a case-by-case basis, because they're looking for, are you attempting to meet the law versus totally ignoring the law. So we don't really say there's an enforcement delay, because enforcement does go into effect on January 1st, but not everyone will get a citation if they're making attempts. And so it's a case-by-case review.
I would say that I think some sort of similar policy statement, if that would help our regulated public feel more confident, I think that may be a possibility. Just like how we're doing with USP 795, 797, 800, 825, somewhere along that lines, maybe something we could do.
Let's see, any other board comment? Okay, let's go back to public comment, then we'll come back to the board talking a little bit more. Any public comment in Sacramento?
No.
Okay, we're ready for public comment via WebEx.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. And it looks like we do have a couple requests for comments, so I'm going to go in the order they were received. First, I have Lindsay Gulahorn. And Lindsay, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
This is Lindsay Gulahorn with the California Community Pharmacy Coalition. Want to thank the board for working with us throughout the legislative process on AB 1286 and for the discussion regarding implementation of the bill. As we prepare for January 1st, we wanted to flag a concern, and it correlates to what's been discussed today regarding the ability of some of our members to comply with those minimum staffing requirements. I have been told our members are working toward hiring personnel to be compliant with the staffing floor provision in AB 1286. One factor, there have been delays recently in the processing of pharmacy technician applications with the board. I'm hearing that it's taking anywhere from 90 to 120 days to process pharmacy technician applications. And I have no doubt that board staff is working hard to get through those applications. We just want to flag that issue for the board, given that AB 1286 will go into effect, I think it's 60 days now, and applications are taking a lot longer than that to be processed. There's also the workforce issues of just trying to find people So we would agree that either an enforcement delay or a policy statement like President O suggested to that effect would be warranted on that provision. And separately, also related to the bill, but separate from that provision, really appreciated the discussion during the Enforcement Committee meeting on October 19th regarding the medication error reporting provisions. We look forward to the release of the draft FAQs and hearing presentations from expert organizations. And also, I noted in the meeting materials a suggestion that maybe a stakeholder meeting be convened. We think that would be beneficial to discuss and hear from the public regarding the process of approving that entity that will be receiving the medication error reports from pharmacies. So thanks again. Appreciate the discussion.
Thank you.
This is the moderator. Next, we have Stephen Gray. And Stephen, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank you. I also agree that there needs to be a reasonable time for implementation, but and there is precedent for that. I remind the board members, or some board members may not know that when certain requirements came out for modification of sterile compounding facilities, especially in large institutions and hospitals where the process was very complicated, maybe sometimes politically sensitive, the board did allow for a entity to have a plan. I would not encourage an open-ended. I would encourage, making it clear that there was a date expectation. But then, as Chairperson Serpa, there could be a citation process. A citation process is not discipline, and that could be used in an inspection process. There's also a order of abatement process that could be used that has timelines associated with it, but it will vary across the state and in many regions, just how long it's going to take to find and add people to the staff that could fill these roles. So I think it's reasonable to, begin an education process, but not to leave it open-ended, and at some point to require an entity that seems to be in a delay to justify the delay and to outline in very clear terms what their efforts and process will be. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Our next individual who has requested public comment, John Gray. And John, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank you very much. This is John Gray, registered pharmacist with Kaiser Permanente. Thanks again, Chair Serpa, for flagging our comment from the last meeting related to the designation of a third party for medication error reporting as required under AB 1286. The definition of the term regulation in California Government Code is every rule, regulation, order, or standard of general application, or the amendment, supplement, or revision of any rule, regulation, order, or standard adopted by any state agency to implement, interpret, or make specific the law, enforce, or administered by it, or govern its procedure. And it does feel to me like the action of designating and, quote unquote, approving a third party to whom medication errors would be reported as envisioned by AB 1286. That feels a lot like the implementation or making specific of the law. So I guess we continue to think that while it probably also has to go through the contracting process with the state to find a vendor to do the work, it also does feel like it ought to go through the regulatory process. Again, I'm sure the board's lawyers and the lawyers from the Office of Administrative Law will look at that, but that is how it looks to us. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide comment on this.
Thank you.
All right, this is a moderator. Our next individual who has requested public comment, Rob Getz. And Rob, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Geddes on behalf of Albertsons and Safeway in the state. And just wanted to thank the board for consideration and this discussion regarding the request that we made in the letter. I don't want to reiterate everything for sake of your time that I did outline in the letter, but we are grateful for the discussion and are committed to making sure that we are compliant as soon as possible in each of our pharmacies, depending on the situation that we may find ourselves, and making sure that we're being thoughtful and adding in these additional staff members to the lower volume pharmacies that we do operate within the state, especially in those areas that may be underserved. So we would appreciate, and I do agree with board member Nicole and her comments that during inspections that it could be easily noted on those inspections when and if there is non-compliance with the new requirements in the law. And then just having that additional time will ensure that we're making sure that our pharmacies are supported and operating safely within the state of California. So appreciate the conversation and hope to see that enforcement delay is possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Our next individual who has requested public comment, identified as Kathy. And Kathy, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
My name is Kathy Gomeshi. I'm a medication safety officer pharmacist, and I'm actually speaking on behalf of myself. I wanted to comment regarding the new requirement for community pharmacies to report their medication errors. And I appreciate the board's spirit of promoting a culture of safety, learning from errors, and improving systems to promote patient safety and to not continue to repeat preventable events that can harm the public. I did want to note that there may be organizations that are already reporting their medication errors to patient safety organizations. And so I wanted to just plant that seed in consideration for whatever guidelines or rules or criteria you create, because it does entail quite a lot of work from an integration and informatics standpoint of de-identifying data to, promote psychological safety and also promote the people who are doing the reporting and the people who might be mentioned in a report or a patient who might be referred to in a report. And then also like the fields of data that get transmitted. And I think in the spirit of this being an effort to promote a culture of safety and to promote learning from errors, I just wanted to plant that seed that some organizations are already doing this, and therefore if a carve out can be made for those, or if the language is more general of not reporting these errors to a specific patient safety organization, but just that it gets reported externally for that sharing and learning, that could be considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please do. Thank you. Okay, members, I would like to consider that we do what we've done in the past, and it seems to work really well. And that is the staff do a really good job of taking these issues into consideration. And whenever we have new laws, that they spend time with education and working with the organizations, but it's on a case-by-case basis, because there are some situations which are you see that the organization is attempting to meet the law, and you see other organizations that they're not attempting, that they are just not trying to find an answer. So I believe we should leave that to staff to take those issues into consideration during the implementation of the new law. Typically, education is the way to go with any law change, but I welcome your thoughts.
I agree with you, Maria. I think that's a good point.
Okay. Any other thoughts from members? Okay, let's move on to our next measure, AB 1341. This measure will authorize until January 1st, 2025, a pharmacist to furnish COVID-19 oral therapeutics. Because this measure included an urgency clause, the provisions became effective immediately upon the governor's signature. The committee agreed with the implementation activities identified by staff. Members, do you have any comments or questions on this bill? I can't see you, so interrupt me if you do raise your hand. Any comments in Sacramento?
No.
Okay, we're ready for WebEx comments.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Please do, thank you. Let's move on to our next measure. That's AB 1557. As you may recall, in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency, the board issued a waiver to extend conditions for remote processing. During the intervening period, the board learned that some hospitals did not have pharmacists on site 24 hours a day, making it impossible to meet federal requirements for medication chart order review, which places the patient at risk. To address this issue, the board sponsored this measure, which was signed by the governor earlier this year. Because this measure included an urgency clause, the provisions became effective upon signature of the governor. The committee again agreed with the implementation activities identified by staff in the meeting materials. As I did during the committee meeting, I'd like to highlight that the licensing committee continues the discussion about the potential to further expand provisions for remote processing, including as a part of its meeting in October. Members, do you have any comments or questions on the proposed activities? Any comments in Sacramento?
No.
We're ready for WebEx comments.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Please do. Moving on to Senate Bill 345. Senate Bill 345 was also supported by the board. The measure will prohibit a healing arts board from denying an application for a license or imposing discipline upon a licensee of a healthcare practitioner based on a civil judgment, criminal conviction, or disciplinary action in another state if that action would have been lawful if provided in California. The committee agrees that the implementation activities should include education on the provisions included in this measure in the board's webinar and future issue of the script, as well as coordinating with the Office of the Attorney General as appropriate. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Any comments in Sacramento?
No.
We're ready for WebEx comments.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And it looks like we do have a request from Stephen Gray. One moment. And Stephen, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank you. This is a very important bill, and I'm really glad that it was adopted by the legislature when we look at what's happening in some other states. I would just like to point out that there may be a need for the board members to review how this impacts the current statute regarding the board's responsibility when a licensee is guilty of unprofessional conduct. If you look at that statute, it basically says that if a person who's licensed in another state, has a disciplinary action, then the board has to consider that as a possible unprofessional conduct. Doesn't dictate exactly what the board has to do, but it does say that the board shall act. So I would just suggest then that there might be at a future meeting of the enforcement committee or however the president wants to assign it, a discussion about how this bill and its provisions impact the board's responsibility towards that responsibility to discipline for unprofessional conduct. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please do. Members, since we had public comment, do you have any additional comments? Okay, let's move on. The last bill that we have to discuss is SB 816. As a reminder, Senate Bill 816 was sponsored by the board and recasts the board's fee schedule consistent with the findings of the independent fee audit. As the effective date for the new fees is January 1st, 2025, the board should have sufficient time to update its regulation language in California Code Regulation Section 1749 to ensure consistency between the statute and related regulations. The committee requested that staff begin the development of the regulation text for consideration by the board in the near future to ensure regulations are in effect at the same time as the statutory changes. The committee agreed with all staff comments regarding education on the changes and updates to application and renewal applications and forms as required. Members, do you have any questions or comments on these activities? Seeing none, let's go. Sacramento, do you have any comments?
No comments.
Okay, we're ready for WebEx comments.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you have a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. Audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Thank you. Our next agenda item is F, discussion and consideration of proposed revisions to frequently asked questions related to inventory reconciliation regulations. Over the past several years, the board has developed several frequently asked questions in a variety of areas as a means to educate licensees and to assist licensees in understanding the board's thinking on specified topics. As pharmacy law is very dynamic, when changes of the law occur, updates to the FAQs may be necessary. As you may recall, effective January 1st, 2023, the board's inventory reconciliation requirements were updated. However, the FAQs released have not yet been updated to incorporate the new requirements. Attachment 5 includes a copy of the draft updated version of the FAQs that incorporate clarifications offered by DCA Council. The version in the meeting materials lost some of its visible track changes when it was changed to PDF format. This includes the removal of previous question 18 that did not add clarity to the issue. The remaining questions were renumbered. Although it's included in the meeting materials as well, I wanted to highlight that during the committee meeting, members requested that FAQs be formatted in an outline format. You will note that the FAQs in the meeting materials are not reformatted based on your feedback, based on the feedback from council, who has concerns that such a format may cause users of the document to misinterpret the alphabetical listing with the similar regulatory format used. Members, do you have any questions or comments regarding the FAQs? Any comments in Sacramento?
No comments.
Thank you. How about comments via WebEx? Oh, we're ready for comments via WebEx.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please do. Thank you. This means that the staff will now be working on posting the updated FAQs. Our next item is agenda item G, discussion and consideration of proposed revisions to pharmaceutical and sharp waste stewardship programs. The meeting materials provide background on the product stewardship programs. So as I did during the committee meeting, I will only provide a high-level summary. California law requires the establishment of pharmaceutical waste and sharps waste stewardship programs as a means to provide safe and convenient disposal options for pharmaceutical and home-generated sharp waste at no cost to consumers. Although CalRecycle is the primary regulator for the stewardship programs, the board has a limited role in evaluating the stewardship plans for compliance with pharmacy law, as well as to develop a list and description of drugs or sharps that are covered under the law. As a part of the board's implementation of this measure, FAQs were developed to assist stakeholders in gaining understanding of the program requirements, the board's role, and definitions of some of the provisions of law. Since the release of the FAQ, staff have continued to receive additional questions that suggest additional changes to the FAQ are appropriate. Attachment 6 includes a copy of the proposed updated version of the FAQ. You will note that the proposed changes are highlighted. To ensure we all have a common knowledge, the proposed changes are in a question, the proposed change, so to assure that you know what was changed, is that the questions in question number 1 and number 3, as well as adding 2 additional questions, 17 and 18 were the changes. As a committee, we agreed with all these changes and bring the information here to the board. Do you have any questions or comments on these FAQs? Seeing none, is there any public comment in Sacramento?
No.
Anne, you have anything else to say?
No.
I had to tease you there for a moment. We're ready for public comment via WebEx.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Please do. So the next step is that staff will be posting these updated FAQs. Our next agenda item is H, discussion and consideration of enforcement statistics. Attachment 7 of the meeting materials includes a summary of the enforcement statistics for the first quarter of the fiscal year. The board has received 765 complaints and closed 764 investigations. The board has revoked 11 licenses, accepted the disciplinary surrender of 4 licenses, formally denied 1 application, and imposed other levels of discipline against 25 licensees or applicants. As of October 1st, 2023, the board has 1,396 field investigations pending. The materials provide a breakdown of the average time frame for the various stages of the field investigation process. Members, do you have any comments on the enforcement statistics? Any comments in Sacramento?
No comments.
We're ready for WebEx comments.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And it looks like there is a question about whether the committee will discuss the updated USP 795 and 797 regulations. And Miriam, if you'd like to verbally make that comment, I'll also request to unmute your microphone, and you'll be given 3 minutes to speak.
That's not an agenda item, so I'm not quite sure what she's going to comment on.
I apologize.
Any other comments on the enforcement statistics?
Doesn't appear there are any requests for comments on the enforcement statistics. So in that case, would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Please do, thank you. I think I'll just add a short editorial comment here, is that there are several regulatory packages that are going through the process. I encourage everyone to keep track of those committee meetings, and there's going to be a hearing also on the compounding regulations. Watch your updates for those dates as they come through. I'd like to thank everyone for your time and attention, and I'll turn the meeting back to President O.
Thank you, Chair Certified, as always, and thank you for all the committee members and all the members. With that, we're going to go to closed session. Thank you, all members of the public, for your participation today. As indicated on the agenda, the board will now convene in closed session to discuss the items set forth on the agenda under number 7. Adjournment for the day will not immediately follow closed session, and there will be no other items of business discussed. Please note the adjournment may not be viewable on the webcast. Members of the public, thank you for joining the meeting today. We will see you all back at 9 a.m. for the public, and for the members, we're gonna shuffle you into a closed session, and we'll start in about 5 minutes at 3:38. So maybe go take a little breather. Sarah, can you please make sure Olivia is promoted and is able to join the closed session, please?
Yes, yep, I will do that.
See you all back in there. And Sarah, if you could just please make me a host, thank you. Okay, we're going to adjourn. Thank you, everyone. Is that good enough, Corinne?
That
Okay.
does it.
All right. Thank you. See you all tomorrow, guys.
Thank you all. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, Corinne. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.